The pen trembled in Marcus's hand as he stared at the divorce papers spread across the mahogany table. After 8 years of marriage, it had come to this: a cold conference room, 2 lawyers, and a chasm of silence between 2 people who once promised forever. He'd prepared himself for this moment, rehearsed the stoic expression, the civil goodbye. What he hadn't prepared for was the sight of Elena walking through that door, her hand resting protectively on the unmistakable curve of a 7-month pregnancy. Time stopped. The room blurred. Every carefully constructed wall Marcus had built around his heart over the past 6 months crumbled in an instant. His mouth went dry as their eyes met across the table, and he saw something flicker in her gaze. Was it fear? Shame? Or something else entirely? The lawyer's voice became white noise as one thought screamed through Marcus's mind: that should have been our child. Asterisk. They'd tried for years. The fertility treatments, the disappointments, the hope that slowly withered with each negative test. It was the weight that finally crushed them, turning love into silence and connection into distance. When Elena asked for the divorce, Marcus had been too numb to fight. He signed the separation papers, moved into a downtown apartment, and threw himself into 70-hour work weeks, telling himself the pain would eventually fade. Now, looking at her, radiant despite the exhaustion in her eyes, clearly carrying someone else's child, the pain roared back with devastating clarity. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have told you. I should have." "Let's proceed with the formalities," her lawyer interrupted sharply, a woman in a steel gray suit who'd clearly decided Marcus deserved no explanations. She slid the papers forward with practiced efficiency. But Marcus couldn't move. His gaze dropped to Elena's trembling hands, to the simple gold band she still wore on her right hand, the one that had been on her left for 8 years. He noticed the purple shadows under her eyes, the way her shoulders sagged with more than just the weight of pregnancy. Something was wrong. Despite everything, despite the betrayal he felt burning in his chest, he knew Elena's expressions like he knew his own heartbeat. "Elena." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Are you okay?" She looked up, startled, and for a moment her composure cracked. Tears pooled in her eyes. "Can we please just finish this? I need to leave. Mrs. Chen needs to get to an appointment," the lawyer added curtly. "Perhaps we could focus on the matter at hand." Marcus watched Elena's jaw tighten, watched her blink back tears with fierce determination. The Elena he knew never cried in front of strangers. She was strong, private, proud. Something was terribly wrong, and every instinct he'd spent 6 months trying to suppress suddenly screamed at him to pay attention. He made a decision that surprised even himself. "I need a moment alone with my wife. Mr. Chen, that's highly irregular. Please." He looked at Elena's lawyer, then at his own. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Elena started to protest, but he'd already stood, extending his hand toward the door. For a long moment, she just stared at him, conflict warring across her features. Then, slowly, she accepted his help, rising from her chair. Her hand in his felt exactly as he remembered, small, cool, fitting perfectly into his palm. That familiar touch sent a jolt through him that he desperately tried to ignore. The lawyers exchanged skeptical glances but filed out, leaving Marcus and Elena alone in the conference room. The silence between them felt like a living thing, heavy with everything unsaid over the past 6 months. "Who is he?" Marcus asked, quietly, his back to her as he stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. "There is no he." Marcus turned, confused. Elena was hugging herself, one hand still resting on her belly, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "The baby." She took a shaky breath. "I used our frozen embryos. From the fertility treatments. I went to the clinic 3 months after you moved out." The words came out in a rush. "I knew it was crazy. I knew you'd moved on, that we were over, but I couldn't let go of the dream we'd had. And I was running out of time. I'm 42, Marcus. This was my last chance." The world tilted. Marcus gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what she'd just said. That's my child. Biologically, yes. But I'm not asking anything from you. I know how unfair this is. That's why I'm here to finalize everything cleanly. You can walk away. I'll handle everything myself. You deserve your freedom." Freedom. The word tasted bitter. Marcus crossed the room, standing before her. "Elena, that's my child. Our child. The child we tried for, prayed for, grieved over every month we failed. And you were going to let me sign those papers without telling me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You left, Marcus. You gave up on us. You asked me to leave. The old hurt surged up. You said you couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep trying, couldn't keep failing. You said we were destroying each other. Because you'd already checked out. Her voice broke. Every negative test, you became more distant. You looked at me like I was defective, like I'd failed you. I couldn't bear it anymore, the hope, the disappointment, the feeling like I was letting you down every single month. Marcus felt like he'd been punched. Failed me. Elena, I thought I was failing you. The fertility doctor said my numbers were borderline. Every month we didn't conceive, I died a little inside thinking it was my fault, thinking I couldn't give you the one thing you wanted most. They stared at each other, the truth finally bare between them. All those months of silence, of assumed disappointments and unspoken pain, crystallizing into understanding. We were both drowning, Elena whispered. And neither of us knew how to save the other. Marcus reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he gently placed his hand beside hers on her belly. Beneath his palm, he felt movement, their child, kicking, alive, real. His breath caught. How far along? He managed. 30 weeks. I have gestational diabetes. The medication isn't working as well as it should. There might be complications. Her voice wavered. I'm scared, Marcus. I'm so scared, and I'm doing this alone, and I thought it would be easier if you didn't know, if you could just move on with your life without. Stop. He cupped her face gently, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. Do you really think there's any version of reality where I could walk away from this? From you. From our baby. But we're getting divorced. We couldn't make it work. We couldn't make it work because we stopped talking, stopped being honest about how much we were hurting. We let our pain build walls instead of bridges. He pressed his forehead to hers. But Elena, I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second of these past 6 months. I just didn't know how to reach you anymore. She sobbed, her hands clutching his shirt. I love you too. I never stopped. I used the embryos because I couldn't let go of the dream of us, of our family. Then don't let go. Marcus pulled back to look into her eyes. We failed each other once, but we're smarter now. We know what happens when we don't communicate. When we let assumptions fester. We can do better. We can be better, for each other and for this baby. Are you sure? This isn't how you imagined starting over. This is exactly what I've been praying for, even when I was too stubborn to admit it. He smiled through his own tears. A second chance. With you. When the lawyers re-entered the conference room 10 minutes later, they found Marcus and Elena standing together, her head resting on his shoulder, his arms wrapped protectively around her and their unborn child. We won't be needing your services today, Marcus announced, his voice strong and certain. Or any day. These divorce papers aren't getting signed. 3 months later, Marcus held his daughter for the first time in a hospital room filled with spring sunshine. Elena, exhausted but glowing, watched as he cradled the tiny miracle they'd created, tears streaming down his face. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. We're calling her Hope, Elena said softly. Hope Grace Chen. Marcus looked at his wife, his daughter, his family, rebuilt from the ashes of almost lost dreams. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't letting go. Sometimes it's holding on, fighting through the pain, and choosing love even when love feels impossible. Sometimes, the most extraordinary thing humans can do is simply refuse to give up on each other. And sometimes, just sometimes, hope walks through the door when you least expect it, 7 months pregnant and offering one last chance at forever.